Oh, let's move this. All right. I'm gonna get this going on a Facebook. How are you all doing today? I hope that you are having a groovy Wednesday. I had such an amazing weekend. I'm going to tell you all about it when I see that it's actually happening here on Facebook, okay? Because there's a delay these days. Okay. Oh, here we go. Hi. I'm going to put that there. There we go. Okay, so some of you were like, what was that thing? I'll show you. Here. So this is part of my podcast recording studio, believe it or not. So it basically has a picture of, it's my like whiteboard for when I coach y'all. And then this I keep behind me, and it sort of provides this buffer when I record my podcast. So that's what that is. So I'm gonna move it out of the way. So it works totally well, because otherwise you would get this big like echo, echo, echo from the back. All right, so here we are at Wake the Fuck Up Wednesday. Oh my gosh, how are you all doing? I had an amazing weekend. It was the finale to my birthday month, because my birthday is 0808. I am a Leo, yeah. So, oh, hey, yeah, continue to send me love. Let me know that you're here, hearts and comments or whatever. And I went into Hatcher Pass, which is like my favorite part of Alaska, because it's got this amazing granite batholith with amazing peaks. And some of you may know that I'm from the Sierra, right, in California. That's like my like happy place. So when I found a place with a ton of granite here in Alaska, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is my heaven. So I love being there. I love going there. I love spending time with my friends there. So I thought, you know, for my birthday, I'm going to go there and hang out with my girlfriends, and we are just going to have an amazing time. So we did. I'm a little bit hoarse. You should listen to the podcast episode tomorrow, because I obviously had to record it before tomorrow. And my voice is so raspy, and I'm like, this is hilarious. I like have this totally raspy voice from literally like howling at the sky and screaming and dancing, and we just had a blast. There's nothing like a group of wild women in the mountains, right? It was so amazing. And just like epic mountains. We hiked up to this pass where you could look over the Bomber Glacier. And anyway, it was amazing. But I hope that you have fun in the mountains during COVID, because for me, it's just so awesome to be forced to explore my home area even more. And I'm just discovering all these really awesome spots. All right, so today, what are we going to talk about? Today, I wanted to talk about basically how to hold two ideas at once. And I don't mean just like, oh, a recipe and getting your kid off to school. What I mean is two opposing thoughts at once, because we are complex people, right? We are complex people. We don't just like behave one way all the time and then the other. And we don't just think one way all the time and then the other. We're complex people, every one of us, all right? And we tend to hold opposing beliefs sometimes, or even just opposing desires, okay? And so when we do that, it creates cognitive dissonance. And I don't know if you remember from the last Wake the Fuck Up Wednesday, but I was talking about cognitive dissonance and how when your inside beliefs don't match how things are on the outside, it creates cognitive dissonance, right? Also, when you hold two opposing beliefs, which can differ for everyone, like, you know, I am spiritual and I am sexual. And for some people, those are two opposing beliefs. They're not for me, but for other people, they may see those two things as opposed. And if they're like, I'm a sexual being and a spiritual being, and have conflict there, then that creates cognitive dissonance, right? Or some people are like, oh, I'm a social liberal, but a conservative when it comes to economics, which in my opinion, they're totally connected, so that can actually happen. But anyway, some people believe like, okay, this is, one thing and this is another. And what do I do? Because the decision I want to make to be conservative economically is not what I would do in the best interest of humankind, right? So people have these opposing beliefs. So there is work that we can do and we must do because of that. Because when we are uncomfortable with other people having opposing beliefs or us experiencing opposing beliefs, it really limits our experience as a human being and it doesn't let us evolve. So, a lot of people say like, oh, you're a hypocrite. Like, how can you be like, I've seen people say this online, not just to me, but to other people. Like, how can you be Buddhist and drink? Or how can you be Buddhist and eat meat? Or how can you be Christian and lie? Or how can you, be a Democrat yet vote for that person or whatever? So people think of that as hypocrisy, but really, because humans are so complex, they're going to do shit like that. They're going to have these differing opinions, these differing ideas that they can hold at the same time. So now I'm going to take my little podcast thing with my kids' blankets on it and do some teaching. Okay. So this was her blanket when she was like, I don't know how old, and then that was her other one. And it creates this amazing buffer for sound. Okay. All right, I'll get my pen. Oh, I want a blue pen. There it is. All right. So there's this thing called the mandorla. Okay, so let's say you have two beliefs. I'm going to use the sexuality one and spirituality one as an example. But you can plug in any two things that you think of as contradictory. They don't actually have to be, and you'll just watch and see what I mean by that. But all right, so let's say you have this one belief over here. All right. Well, here, let me draw this thing first. So we have one belief here and one belief here. And we see them as opposed, right? We're like, these are two opposed beliefs. And in the middle, there's all this tension because it's like, you either got to be here or here. That like all or nothing thinking, that black and white thinking, right? It's like, hey man, you're either good or you're bad, okay? You are either spiritual or sexual. You are either Buddhist or you drink wine. Whatever, people have these like ideas. And in between, people don't like that. That's where the cognitive dissonance takes place, that tension, right? It creates this tension here. And so what a lot of people like to do is think all or nothing. They're like, hey, this is uncomfortable to acknowledge that I can be both of these things at the same time. So I'm just going to choose one, right? I'm going to decide that, if you're spiritual, you can't be sexual. You're either one or the other. I'm going to decide that you're either Buddhist or you drink wine. You can't be both, right? Because this place is uncomfortable. So what happens when people want to avoid that discomfort is they get into a very sort of fundamentalist viewpoint, right? Or black and white thinking, either or thinking. So, but what really happens is as you bring these things together, there's this space in here. And see how it looks like an almond? Well, that is called the mandorla. When I did some work with Bill Plotkin, who wrote Soulcraft and many other amazing books. But this little space here, this almond, is called the mandorla. I think it's an Italian word, an architectural word. And this is where you can have two opposing beliefs, and where they overlap is where all the shit is, y'all, in a good way. This is where the dancing happens. This is where life gets amazing and juicy, and we let ourselves be who we are. Oh, hey, everyone, if you're on, send me some hearts or put a comment so that I can see your name. So, mandorla, all right? We don't have to have these opposing beliefs or thoughts be separate all the time. There was an amazing practice that I did in the desert with Bill Plotkin, and it was like we all did it, but a great example was someone who was feeling a very rough pull between her very disciplined and honorable spiritual practice and her highly sexual, sensual, wild self, right? She saw those as opposed. And obviously not all the, in fact, most of us there were like, we're not seeing the tension. Like you can totally be both. But what matters is that for her, it was very challenging. So, and creating a lot of unrest because of this. So what we did was, okay, on the one side, you have that perspective, like let's say the super spiritual perspective, make their case to the other one. Like, no, you can't be that way. Spirituality is so important because we need to transcend this world. We need to transcend the body. That's what causes so much suffering and pain. And look at the wars and everything caused over it, right? And then on the other side, you know, you would have the other thought make their argument like, no, we are born in this amazing miracle of a body. I mean, we are given sensations and orgasms and a clitoris for a reason, right? And then like go back and forth. And then you would make these arguments back and forth until you felt totally heard from each perspective, right? But here's what's fascinating. When you really do that, right? When you're here, no, you listen to me and you go and you go and you go until you feel heard. There's nothing else to say. And then you come over here and you go and you go and you go and you feel heard until there's nothing else to say. And you go back and forth. You end up here. You end up in the middle, in a mandorla of these two parts of you. Because this is what's real, y'all. This isn't fucking real. This is a construct of our mind that they are two opposing things, right? What is really happening is we are here in the mandorla. This is where we experience wholeness. This is where we experience a true appreciation for our complexity as a human being. Right? What do you think about that? A lot of people are like, no, 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 there is good and bad. It is black and white. You know, when I was in Oregon, I think when I was first moving there, I took like 3 different part-time jobs as a nurse practitioner. And one of them was at a outpatient clinic. And I was in the MRI room with a patient monitoring them. And I was standing with the MRI tech in this room. If you've ever watched Grey's Anatomy, you've seen them. There's this like room with protective glass and you can see the patient in the other room. Anyway, I was talking to this guy there who is very conservative. But you know, we had developed a friendship over time, just joking with each other and whatnot. He, like, I would eat a salad and he would be like, oh, are you eating your Ashland salad? Because the clinic was in Medford, which is very conservative, and Ashland is this total hippie town. So I was eating a salad. He's like, you're eating your Ashland salad? And I was like, dude, it's called fucking vegetables and you should be eating them too. I don't know what this Ashland salad thing came from. Like humans eat vegetables. Anyway, so we developed this banter, really fun. And he ended up really liking me like as a person, right? And so this guy was going into the MRI machine and he had AIDS and he was getting scanned for potential tumors and whatnot. And I was saying like, oh, I feel so sorry for him. Like, this must be really hard. And the MRI tech was like, well, in the Bible, it says that if you're gay, you're going to go to hell or whatever. And I was like, what? And he goes, it's black and white, Anna, in the Bible. It's black and white, right? And then I said, well, do you think I'm going to go to hell? And he's like, unfortunately, yeah. Like, I love you. I know that you're awesome and you're super kind and nice, but it says in the Bible, unless you accept Jesus, blah, 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 you're going to go to hell. And I was like, wow, that is so wild to me. And I was like, I just don't, that doesn't make sense to me. Like why a God would make that weird either or distinction, because this is life right here in this middle place. This is where humans hang out, right? This is where we are complex. This is where we honor our wholeness. When we don't, we feel like we have to give up a part of ourselves in order to get rid of this tension. So we say, okay, I'm going to give up the sexual part of me so that I can be spiritual, or I'm going to give up the wild side of me so that I can be calm and spiritual, whatever it is. And the truth is that you don't have to give up either. Sometimes you need to choose, like when you vote, if you have opposing beliefs that one of the candidates is going to make you go on one side or the other, you need to choose what's more important, the economy or human rights, right? So sometimes you'll have to choose to make a decision, but inside you, it doesn't mean that you have to give up one for the other. You know, it's so much more fun to be in this place, to accept that you are whole and complex and that you can be immensely spiritual and very devoted to your practice and highly sexual and wild and crazy, right? What I love is that my squad of women that were in the mountains, you know, many of us had a meditation practice and all this stuff, but then there we are, you know, at night, partying it up, dancing, hooping and hollering, you know, talking about sex. We love skinny dipping. Like, you know, there's the beauty of being a human being and being it all and dancing in this place. So I'm wondering, like, do you have a place where you are feeling, yeah, I have this either or mindset, right? Because that can keep you trapped in places too. Like, when, you know, in the podcast tomorrow, you'll be able to hear about it. But one of the examples I gave was how I was in this one relationship, and I always felt like, you know, a partner had to be either like good or bad. Like they couldn't be in the middle. And if I was going to leave someone, it had to be because it was bad, right? Like bad. So if there was any sign that there was still hope in a relationship and that that person had any redeeming qualities, I would like stay. I would like beat the shit out of that relationship, y'all, to the ground, right? And so there were so many times where I was like, this isn't right. I should leave. But I was like, but this person isn't bad, right? And so I waited and waited and waited and waited and waited until they cheated on me. And that I could categorize as bad. So then I was like, okay, now I'm out. But you know what? I could have avoided all that shit if I just honored myself to begin with and not needed to put people in a box of good or bad before honoring myself. But here's the thing. When you aren't putting people in a good or bad category, when you are not thinking in black and white or either or, right? Then it's up to you. When we allow ourselves to categorize things as all or nothing, as black or white, as either or, it's almost like it gives us a scapegoat. We get to avoid the discomfort of the cognitive dissonance. It's almost an indulgent behavior, right? Because it helps us avoid that. But what it doesn't do is let us honor that complexity. And when we put people in these boxes or situations in these boxes or beliefs in these boxes of it's either this or this, then we end up feeling more comfortable when we choose one or the other, because we're like, it's so clear. Like the guy in the MRI room. Oh, it's so clear you're going to go to hell, black or white. Like if he could see this, he would feel a little more uncomfortable. Like, that's a good question. I don't know. But it's like, nope, it's so clear you're going to hell, even though you're a super nice person and I like you. Right? It's so cray-cray. But we do this. We, like people that are liberal, do it with people who are conservative. Like, oh, you're evil. If you like Trump, you're evil. Or like when I was at UC Santa Cruz, like, oh, you shaved your legs, you're giving in to the man, right? Like it's all over the fucking place where we put things into black or white, right? But it doesn't serve us, y'all. It doesn't serve us. So the place to be is where we are sitting in that cognitive dissonance. because then you make decisions based on what you want and not because of some judgment about what is good or bad, right or wrong, right? That's harder. That's a harder life to live. It's a harder life to live when you don't get to follow some rule book. There is an amazing story, This American Life. I'm going to sip my tea. Hey, y'all. Hi. Send me some hearts and likes there. I'd love to see you. Yes, my mug is huge. It is as big as my head. In Alaska, things are big. Okay. We don't have creeks. We have rivers. We don't have hills. We have mountain ranges. Anyway, and we have fucking huge mugs. So This American Life, an episode called Switched at Birth. Oh my gosh, you have to listen to it. So there's this one family, very conservative religious family, doing Bible study as a family every night and all that. Then there's another family, super liberal, very outgoing, very social community and a lot of social justice community work, etc. One woman from each of those families has a baby in the hospital. They get switched by accident. This is back when that was a lot easier to happen, I guess. But anyway, it's a fascinating story. I'll tell you right now that the woman from the conservative family knew it and didn't say anything. You gotta go listen to that episode. Okay, This American Life, Switched at Birth. Anyway, so what happens is 30 years later, the conservative woman finally is like, I gotta say something. It's a little late. But anyway, she does say something. And what's fascinating is these girls were like, I never felt at home, because the girl from the conservative family growing up in the other family, she actually ended up being conservatively religious herself, and she felt all alone in that family. The other girl was like all outgoing and liberal and everything, cheerleading squad type stuff. Not like cheerleading is liberal, but I'm just saying like I'm more outgoing and sociable and everything. And that family was like, wow, she's so different. She like lights up our family, right? And she never felt a part of them. And in that episode, they talk about how research shows there's probably a way that some brains are wired that appreciate Black or white thinking. Some brains really can't handle this, y'all, right? Some people really can't handle that situation. Research shows there's probably a way that some brains are wired there. That, don't you love hearing yourself? So, so there are definitely ways that our brain can be wired that will give us tendencies towards wanting Black and white thinking, and other brains are more comfortable with a little bit of tension. Some brains are more comfortable here. So there's almost like this aversion, right? It's like there's this aversion to having that discomfort there for the people that are wired that way. And there is an aversion to having things be so black and white in another way, right? And so we need to acknowledge that some people's brains are wired that way, and some people like really, really find discomfort in this area. So they prefer black and white thinking. Because for me, I was always like, what? Like, why would someone choose that? It was so confusing to me, right? Or situations. And oh my God, this keeps going off. I'm sorry, you guys. Okay, so I'm going to read some of the comments here. Good morning. Oh, hey, from Portland. And Michelle says, sometimes the gray feels like the excuse, but this is very insightful. Haley says, I experienced that when I was a littler with you're either emotional or strong. Yeah, exactly. Michelle says, one of my biggest black or white struggles is around mother, wife, selflessness, and sacrifice, and authentic, wild self-care. Yes. Thank you for saying that. So let's look at that, right? So we have like mother, self-care. So here's the thing, when that's the classic like either or thinking, right? And you know, in a different context, so like let's take it out of motherhood and look at the Black Lives Matters movement, right? What I saw a lot with my clients was that there was this feeling like I have to do everything. It's like you're either into Black Lives Matter and that's all you care about, or you're needing to take care of yourself. You couldn't do both. So they would just, okay, I'm going to feel guilt. I'm going to read. I'm going to study. I'm going to go to protests. I'm going to do all this stuff all day and all night. And then what ends up happening is people burn out. And then guess what's happening? No one's fucking doing shit because they're totally burned out, right? They're like, oh, see, I can't do that. I can't be an activist and take care of myself. So we can look at that and say, yeah, that totally makes sense, right? But then when it comes to motherhood or even caregiver, like if you're the caregiver for your parent, like I felt this way as my parents were aging, before I was a mother, my parents were aging, they were both in their 80s when they died. And, I felt that pull a lot. Like, do I give to them? Like, I remember my dad was dying. Like, he was in hospice. And I was going to have this big 08 party. I had planned it, everything. It was going to be awesome. And my dad was dying, so I canceled it. And I went to California, and I would lie in his bed. He was at the VA hospital, and I laid next to him, and it was just such an amazing spiritual experience. But on my birthday, because I'd gone down for a few days, on my birthday, I had a friend who started Numi Teas. There's just so much amazing shit going on in the Bay Area. But anyway, so one of my friends had started Numi Teas, N-U-M-I, and he was having this amazing like warehouse party type thing. And I was like, that would be a fun way to celebrate my birthday. And I was like, okay, like if I go to that, I need to be okay that if my dad dies and I go to this thing, right? But to be fair, I didn't think he was going to. Like, he was doing okay. It was still going to be a few days if we were completely basing it on physiology at the time. And I said to him, I said, Dad, I would like to go, today's my birthday, and I would like to go and celebrate with some friends over in Oakland. And he's like, okay, that's okay. And I said, I'm really nervous because what if you die when I'm gone and I really want to be here? And he was like, no, it's okay. Go. Anyway, we had our chat. So I went. I had a great time. I came back. It's not like I stayed, forever, but I went, celebrated, came back. And it was just, to me, one of these examples of I could be like the good kid, but I also needed some self-care, right? I had been laying at his bedside for days, all day in a VA hospital. There wasn't fucking like a lot, like I think iPhones were just coming out so I could actually do something on my phone while I was hanging out there. Otherwise you still had to like connect to internet and all that shit. So I think I was so grateful because the iPhone had been invented, and I was like, oh my God, I can like do all these amazing things like while my dad is sleeping and not leave his side. And he ended up dying without me by his side anyway. I was super frustrated, right? But the point is, like, we are in this decision sometimes. And you do have to, like I said earlier, you do have to use it to make a decision sometimes, right? Like I was like, I am just, like, I don't have anything to give right now to my dad. I've just been here for days and days. I'm gonna go, rejuvenate, come back, totally present again, okay? And sometimes shit's gonna happen that you don't like. Like I said, I had to be okay with what if he passed, right? And so I said everything I needed to say and all of that. So with motherhood, like we can look at that and say, okay, so what does mother mean to you? Because that's the thing. It's similar to earlier when I was talking about my friend who felt like her sexuality was in conflict with her spirituality, right? And for me, I don't see that. But for her, because of her spiritual training, it was that the body is this and that and worldly and needs to be transcended and all of that. So her sexuality seemed diametrically opposed. But then it leads to all of this tension and conflict and not honoring the other aspect. Like she was like, I have to choose one. I'm either running around and like going to sex parties or I'm meditating, right? And so it's like, well, why not wake up and meditate and then go to the sex party here, right? So with the mother and the self-care, it's the same thing. It's like, why is self-care not a part of motherhood? Right? Recognize that our definition of motherhood comes from our own mind. There's no definitive definition of what motherhood is out there in the world. You, like, some fucking mothers in the animal world eat their young. Some mothers, like, you know, are with them for years. Others, they like birth them, the thing can get up and then they're out of there, right? And others, it's like this lifetime bond. So there are, even within humans, right? So we make up what a good mother is and what a bad mother is, right? I'm sure that I'm a bad mother in many people's eyes because I have friends who have 6-year-olds like Maya who've never been away from their child, right? And I regularly, you know, take some time. I don't take as much time as my lovely husband, but I do, like, you know, I'll go do a backpacking trip. I'll go do a meditation retreat twice a year and, you know, go away for a week. I'll go do a wilderness quest or something like that. Like, and I do that. But the self-care thing also is a part of motherhood to me. Like, they're not diametrically opposed, just like sexuality and spirituality are not diametrically opposed. So it's important to recognize these are mental constructs. And the only reason that they seem diametrically opposed is because of our thoughts and what society has taught us. Now, from the moral perspective, you know, someone said black and white for me sometimes gives more structure to moral choice. Exactly. So earlier I was talking about how for a lot of people, like the guy in the MRI machine who was gay with AIDS, the MRI tech was like, this is easy. I can judge him morally because it's black or white in the Bible. Being gay is bad. And so therefore that's bad. He found ease in being able to make a moral judgment as opposed to like, ooh, interesting. Like, I do believe in God and kindness and, you know, loving everyone. Yet there's this weird part that talks about this. So where do I do that? Like, what if there isn't any black and white? What if it is gray? And that's uncomfortable. So yes, you do need to use your different values to make a decision sometimes. Like, you have to decide. Like, sometimes I go, you know what? Like, I was just gone for the last 2 weekends. Like, I can't go away this weekend. Like, I need to be with my kid. Decision, right? But I'm at least going to get out for a 30-minute run. So I'm keeping my self-care, right, for a little bit, right? So we make these decisions. So it can be helpful to make a decision if we hold those two values. But you need to know what you want. You need to know what you value in order for that to be effective, right? You need to know what's most important to you, right? But you have to balance that. So it's not like, well, motherhood's most important to me, so I'm always going to choose that. It's like, no, like in that moment, what's happening? Like when I was at my dad's bedside, in that moment, I was about to lose my shit. I've been sitting there for days and days and days, right? What was most important at that time was this. It didn't mean that I wasn't a good daughter or that I didn't love my dad, which some people would have construed, right? And decided to stay and been there another 2 weeks, right? And so here's the thing. When, like I said earlier, when we are here, when we are in the mandorla, life's more complicated. It is harder, right? It is harder to sometimes make a decision. And I love how you said it gives more structure to moral choice when things are black and white, for sure. Like, I have that. It's like, hey, in general, honesty is good, lying is bad, right? But is honesty always the right thing to do? In my opinion, no. There are times where it's not, right? There's times when the kinder thing to do is to maybe not be 100% honest, right? So, but in general, if someone made me choose honesty or lying, I would choose honesty, but I acknowledge that there's this so that I don't, because even though it may help you make a moral choice, what it does when we are allowed to be in this space is we are then not judging. We don't judge ourselves. We don't judge other people. We go, well, interesting. So you're like, you're on both ends here. Because normally some people are like, what a hypocrite. They're this way and that way. You know, these are like the comments I get for my Drink Like a Buddhist article. What a hypocrite. You can't be Buddhist and drink at the same time. They are like totally, there's nothing to do with alcohol and Buddhism. Buddhists don't drink, you know, and it's like, there's a lot of fucking Buddhists that drink, just FYI. They're just not perfect, right? And I mean, there isn't such a thing anyway. So being black and white helps you make decisions, for sure. But then we end up judging ourselves about not being a good mom. We end up judging others, right? We end up being in this place that isn't as open to evolution. So I want to encourage you to just play with this of, I have these opposing ideas. The only reason that I think they are totally opposed is because of my own mental construct. What would it be like to dance in the mandorla? What would it be like to dance in that place, right? Then from there, we can be a more whole person and acknowledging all these other aspects of ourselves. We can be more accepting of other people's complexities, right? It is a messier place to live in for sure, the gray, right? But the reality is that is the way the world is. The middle way, right? It's such a brilliant concept. The middle way, the middle way. You look at nature, there's not black and white. You look at any human being, there's not black and white. We are complex. So let's not fight it and try to put it in boxes, right? When we accept that this is the way humans are, that we are good and bad, right? All of us. One of the things I mentioned in my podcast that you could listen to tomorrow, I have a lot of Ram Dass quotes in my head lately, but he said, like, when I look at, when we look at a tree, we can understand why it's like that. We say, oh, I can see why the tree's bending this way. It's reaching towards the sunlight. And I can see why it grew with this lump because there's a rock under there. He's like, but why can't we do that with humans? Why can't we do that with humans and say, oh, I see why you're like that. Because you were reaching for the sunlight here and that rock got in your way there. He said, you know, why can't we look at humans as trees? I want to look at humans as trees, is what he said. And I think that's just so beautiful, right? It's like we can understand that people are complex and we can get confused. Like, how can you be this and how can you say you're a good father and do this? And how can you say you're a good mother and do this? And it's like, because we're trees, y'all. Shit happens to us, shapes us. We aren't black and white. We aren't either or. We are in this complex place. And it's so beautiful. I mean, that is where the magic happens in the mandorla. Okay? All right, y'all. Take care. Sending you lots of love. Mwah. Bye.